Working the night shift as a security guard at the Willowbrook Mall sounded like easy money. Walk the perimeter, keep an eye on things, make sure everything is locked up. Simple. At least, that's what I told myself before I took the job. After a few weeks, I realized there was nothing simple about it. Not with the things I started seeing and hearing after hours. The way shadows twisted and sounds echoed through the deserted hallways at night made me feel like I was being watched by something hidden, something human, or maybe worse. My shift started at midnight, and by then the place was deserted. It was just me and the dull hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, casting dim patches of light that faded out quickly, leaving most of the mall cloaked in darkness. I walked slowly, my boots echoing in the emptiness. Everything felt sharper, heightened, the way shadows lingered, the sound of my footsteps bouncing off the walls, the cold, stagnant air settling on my skin. But all of that was nothing compared to what started happening around my second week on the job. It was about 2 a.m. when I first heard it. I was patrolling near the fashion wing, the rows of glass windows reflecting my silhouette as I walked past them, the mannequins inside standing eerily still in the dim light. A strange creaking sound made me pause. I shone my flashlight around, squinting at the darkened storefronts. Then, faintly, I heard what sounded like someone walking, slow and deliberate, just around the corner. My stomach dropped. It was the kind of sound that makes you realize you're not alone. "Hello?" I called out, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. Silence. I inched forward, rounding the corner, heart thudding in my chest, but there was no one there, just the faint smell of stale air from the ventilation system. I told myself it was probably nothing, a figment of my imagination. But even as I resumed my patrol, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was there, watching. The next few nights, the sounds became more frequent. It wasn't just footsteps. I'd hear faint whispers, things shifting in the shadows. Once, I found a bench dragged out from its spot, facing the hallway. Another time, a trash can had been knocked over, its contents scattered on the floor. I cleaned up and moved on, convincing myself it was just some maintenance oversight, or maybe some stray animal that got in, but that feeling of being watched never went away. One night, I was patrolling near the food court when I found a cell phone lying on one of the tables. It was strange because I hadn't seen it earlier during my rounds, and the mall had been empty all night. The phone was off, but something about it made me uneasy. I picked it up and decided to leave it in the security office, just in case someone came looking for it. As I walked back to the office, I felt my skin prickle with that familiar feeling of being watched. I tried to shake it off, but then I noticed a shape in the reflection of one of the darkened storefronts. It was just a glimpse, but it looked like a man standing motionless behind me. I whipped around, my flashlight scanning the empty hallway. Nothing, just shadows. Back in the office, I set the phone down and sat in the chair, trying to catch my breath. I flipped through the security feeds, my eyes darting from one empty corridor to another, looking for anything unusual, but the screen showed only silence. I closed my eyes, trying to shrug off the nerves. Then, out of nowhere, the phone I'd left on the desk started vibrating. My heart nearly stopped. I picked it up and stared at the screen. It was blank, no caller ID, just a buzzing sound that sent a chill down my spine. I answered, raising it cautiously to my ear. "Hello?" There was nothing on the other end, just silence. And then, so faintly I almost didn't hear it, a soft exhale, as if someone were on the other end, just listening. I hung up immediately and set the phone down, feeling a wave of dread wash over me. Who had left the phone there, and who was calling? The next day, I mentioned the incident to Carl, my supervisor. He gave me a hard look, scratching at his beard. "You haven't seen anyone around, right? No signs of break-ins?" "No," I said, but the uncertainty must have shown on my face because he sighed and leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Look, you're not the first to mention weird stuff here at night, but the cameras don't pick up anything. Could just be your imagination," he said, shrugging. But the way he avoided my gaze told me he knew more than he was letting on. I let it go, but that night, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Around 3 a.m., I was passing the entertainment section, just a few storefronts away from the children's arcade. The smell of stale popcorn clung to the air, and my footsteps seemed to echo louder than usual. I slowed down, straining to listen. Then, clear as day, I heard a soft humming coming from the arcade, like a child singing quietly to themselves. I knew it was closed. I knew there was no way anyone should be in there. But as I approached, the humming stopped abruptly. I leaned into the darkness, my flashlight cutting through the shadows, illuminating the empty arcade games, the claw machines sitting silent and still. Nothing moved, but the hair on the back of my neck prickled with the feeling that someone, was hiding just beyond my reach, waiting. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something strange. A small, crumpled note lay on the floor near one of the claw machines. I picked it up, my hands trembling as I unfolded it. In scrawled, barely legible handwriting, it read, "I'm still here." My stomach twisted as I shoved the note into my pocket, unwilling to keep it in sight any longer. Someone was in the mall with me, and they wanted me to know it. Over the next few nights, I noticed things disappearing from my desk. My keys, my coffee cup, even my flashlight once. I'd find them later in strange places, behind the bathroom sink, on the stage of the children's play area, even once inside a display case of one of the stores. Every time I found one of my missing items, it was like a punch to the gut, a reminder that whoever was here was getting bolder. Then, the escalator incident happened. It was around 1 a.m., and I was passing by the escalators that led up to the abandoned second-floor wing. That part of the mall had been closed off for renovations that never finished, and the area was dark, unused. As I passed, the escalator suddenly jerked to life, the metallic clanking sound filling the silence. My heart jumped, and I whipped around to see the escalator slowly churning upward. Someone, was on the second floor, waiting in the dark. I took a step forward, hesitant, my flashlight trained on the ascending steps. I could just make out a shadow at the top of the escalator, a figure watching me from the darkness. I turned and bolted back to the security office, locking myself inside, trying to convince myself it was just some mechanical malfunction. The next day, I put in a request to have the second floor area checked, but when maintenance went up there, they found nothing. No sign of anyone. No reason for the escalator to have started on its own. On my last night at the mall, I decided to confront whatever was going on. I wasn't going to leave without an answer, even if it meant walking right into the center of the fear that had gripped me since that first night. Around 2 a.m., I made my way to the arcade. I could feel my heart pounding, but I forced myself to move forward. When I entered, the lights above flickered, and I saw a figure standing at the far end of the room. It was a man, tall and thin, his face obscured by a hood. He stood perfectly still, hands tucked into his pockets, just watching me. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer. He tilted his head slightly, his face still hidden in shadow. Then, slowly, he lifted a hand and pointed toward the exit, as if telling me to leave. Fear flooded my veins, but I didn't move. I had to know why he was here, what he wanted. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He stepped closer, the light catching his face just enough for me to see a thin, twisted smile spreading across his lips. And then, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, he whispered, "I'm keeping watch, just like you." I took a step back, my mind racing. My flashlight flickered, casting his face into darkness again. But when the light returned, he was gone. I spent the last hour of my shift locked in the security office, hands shaking, eyes darting to every corner of the room. The sense of being watched, of not being alone, was stronger than ever. By the time my shift ended, I'd made up my mind. I handed in my keys, gave Carl my notice, and left without a word. Even now, I wonder who that man was, what he was doing in the empty halls of the mall, but I'm not going back to find out. And every so often, when I'm out late, I catch myself glancing over my shoulder, looking for a shadow that never quite fades, wondering if he's still out there, keeping watch, just like me.